you listen to the headlines about Gen Z, you're going to think that they are lazy, they're entitled, they're impossible to manage. But what if those headlines are completely wrong? Today on this episode, we are talking to a leader who actually manages several Gen Z employees, and he's sharing what's actually working, why traditional management is failing, and how these employees are shaping the future of work. You're not going to want to miss this episode, so let's dig in. All right, welcome back to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I am your host, Trent Cotton, and today I want to talk about Gen Z. There's a ton of media that's out there, and my guest today I found on LinkedIn contributing to the conversation, and he actually manages Gen Z. So, Devin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Devin Collins with KPMG Performance Hub in Lake Nona, Orlando. And yes, I have a fairly large team of 50 or so analysts, and I'd say about 30% of them are Gen Z, more or less.
Fun. Well, I want to get into some of the media topics that are out there because Forbes just put something out not too long ago. It was a little bit earlier this year, and it was talking about how Gen Z is reshaping leadership and workforce culture. And I, in my day job, spend a lot of time in workforce data and look at it generationally. And I'm kind of optimistic about Gen Z. I mean, there's some really interesting things that I think they're going to bring to the workplace to change it. But a couple of things that just really jumped out at me was that 86% of Gen Zers see purpose as pivotal to their overall well-being and job satisfaction. And then 75% consider this a key factor in decision-making process. So
I would agree with
would you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's important that you give them a valuable place to work, somewhere they can have a space to explore, like in the AI lab I just introduced a couple of days ago to the team, where the creators of the AI tools are now in a group where
Mhm.
I'm looking for them to create more tools. Big introduction yesterday to one of our bank clients' accounts on simplifying some of the work that's very difficult for them, but it simplifies that. So they're really an incredible generation.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It also talked about the impact on leadership. And it said that they respond best to leaders who demonstrate emotional intelligence and genuinely care about their well-being. And it pulled a quote from, I can't see his first name, but anyway, he said, over the past 5 years, we've adapted our leadership style to be more inclusive and transparent. Our Gen Z employees expect to be informed of decision making processes and want regular feedback on their performance. And it's interesting because the regular feedback we saw, I think the big shift was with millennials. Because I was managing a team at a pretty large bank. It was kind of a southern bank, but it was super regional, even into California. But my kind of your traditional southern bankers, they had a really hard time with millennials at the time coming in and going, all right, I've worked for 6 months, what's next? Like, what's my
Right,
career path? And they're
right.
like, no, you got to serve 4 or 5 years. What are you seeing in terms of what are the expectation changes that Gen Z is kind of placing on you as a leader?
So I've made the adjustment already that you're kind of referring to. And actually, I find that my entire team is more responsive to that type of leadership space, called a space. I create a space where I'm a boss friend is what I kind of refer myself to myself as. So like, or a dad, I guess would be more, with tough love when it's needed.
Mhm.
So that is really well received by everybody in every generation. I even have a baby boomer on my team that just he fits right in. At first, he was nervous about working with a bunch of young people, and now we're all just kind of humming along. Really, really high production from Gen Z and everybody involved.
Love that.
So there's so much truth in those things, but they're not that difficult to get past when you accept it for what it is and honestly realize that I would like to be treated that way too. I would like to have the space to derail and have a PTO day I impose PTO days when I see somebody derailing. So I would like that space too. I do it now. When I need self care, I take it. So there's so much truth to that, but it just makes the world a better, the work world a better place when you do that, when you accept it for what it is.
Yeah, early on, well, I wouldn't say early on, uh, probably 2016, 2017. I read Brene Brown's book, Leading Courageously. And, it was all about being vulnerable. And that was just not something, I don't know about you, but that was not something I was taught in
No,
leadership or even in being a guy. So it really kind of rocked my world. But I remember it was just a rough week, and it was Thursday afternoon. I was exhausted. I didn't have anything from like 3 o'clock on, and I kept looking at the screen, going, "Okay, well, if I do this," but it was just so much effort for me to even start the task. I just put in the group chat, and I was managing 60, 70 people at the time. Put in the group chat and said, "Hey, team, does anybody need me? Because I'm done. Like, I have nothing left to give. I'm taking the rest of the afternoon off. I may sleep in tomorrow. I'll be back on at 10 a.m. in the morning."
that is it.
And
I that is exactly the way I am now. I'm very open and vulnerable. As a matter of fact, today, because I start my PTO after today, for 2 weeks, and some one of my analysts said, enjoy your vacation," and I said, I really need it. I had to complete 43 annual reviews,
my
your
lord.
one-on-ones that we do monthly, and I interviewed about a dozen people the past week for new analyst roles, and I said I crashed and burned, so I will enjoy it. Thank you very much, and like that's it. Like they know that the boss is tired.
Yes. But I think that that's okay. I mean, early in my career, there were several times that, my boss or people that I was supporting, they'd just act weird. And I always thought it was something that I did. But I mean, it could have
Hmm.
been they had traffic issues, they got in a wreck, they had family issues. I think, this started with the millennials, and I think Gen Z is about to ramp it up. But what's really interesting though is there's so many different narratives about Gen Z, because the Guardian in our next article, it points out that, the kind of the nomenclature, or how a lot of people are looking at the Gen Z workers are saying undisciplined, entitled, lazy, and that this is not uncommon. It seems to be every time we have a new generation enter the workforce, it's, oh, they're not this or they're not that. Yeah.
Right.
But it was really interesting. They asked one of the Gen Zers and about the narrative. He goes, I think the narrative is bullshit. I just love it. The
Yes.
generations before, yeah, the generation before us, they were all just about work, and then life had to take a back seat. We are a really
Yes.
smart generation that hustles, but we don't want to get burnt out, and we want to be paid adequately for the value that we bring in. And I don't think that's too much to ask.
I don't think it's too much to ask. I do know after the 30 years in the business world that we love to pick on the generation after us. That's just
Yes.
the nature of things. So, but I will say, in fairness to the article, somewhat there is a line that I have to hold with Gen Z, and it really is kind of, if I were to have to focus in on the folks that need the most guidance at first, it would be Gen Z. So it's about showing them the edges. Is the way I put it. Show them the edges, color them in hard so they know where they are. That they're let them learn, through tough love sometimes, and consequences. I've had to dismiss people because they don't meet me in the middle. They don't stay in the lines where I want them or need them. So that stand my ground, hold the line is the truth on that. But once you do that hard work, and that's mostly around the new Gen Z that are entering the workforce.
Right.
Once you do that hard work, and unfortunately just in the firm, the rest of the team just production just goes. It just goes. I don't know how else to describe it. I've got a group of an amazing AI innovators of investigators. We do financial crimes investigations. Amazing investigators work together 2 days a week in the office and at home. But a lot of them like to come into the office and do more than 2 days a week in the office, because they like being together in that environment. So there's a lot of truth to that. But I would agree with bullshit. I would agree. There's a lot of bullshit there. There's just a few that don't make it. And maybe me letting them go gives them the kick in the behind that they need to be a better professional in the next job.
All right. So during our prep session, you mentioned something, and I think you've already kind of teetered on it about drawing the clear lines, but you mentioned that you like to provide immediate feedback and a very transparent progression of systems with like a 9 box. So can you kind of walk us through what does that system look like, and why is it so important to have that kind of a system for Gen Z?
The I'll start with the progression cycle that we run is twice a year. So that is paying attention, very specific attention to their career. And it's important to us as at KPMG Performance Hub, we're almost a funnel into the firm, into the associate level roles. So they're analysts, and then they move into the associate roles over time. So that progression is loud and clear. The IBOs or business objectives around what they need to do to get progressed through the analyst roles, and then be eligible for a role in the firm where the pay goes up substantially. Those are very clearly drawn out. They're unmistakable. And what we do with that is every month, this is a minimum now. Once a
Mhm.
month, we have a check-in meeting where I use Copilot to build my agenda that already knows what I want to go through touch points. So it's a well-being check up front, and I don't just say, "How you feeling? How you doing?" I really dig in, like, to make sure they're being honest. Because if I feel like a derail is coming, which typically shows up in the numbers at the same time, so I kind of know something's wrong. So we have the wellness check and have that quick discussion on any blockers that they may be experiencing, derailing, just being honest about that. The way I was honest with the team that I need this PTO. So that monthly cadence is held to a tight standard. We do not miss those meetings. So I'm going on PTO 2 weeks. I had all my meetings for June done, and then July I've got kind of scheduled staggered out so that it's not an overwhelming month for me. However, now the next step is that immediate feedback when something comes across my desk, and I'm always alert. I'm always aware of what's going on around me, or the other supervisors know, let Devin know right away this is happening. He's going to want to address that immediately. So I do pull people, in a not in a scary boss man way, but in a, hey, what's going on? I noticed. So I had an analyst walking through the office, leaving at the end of a day, and the body language was just off. And so I called him on a cell phone. I said, "Hey, I noticed that you're not okay. So what's going on? Talk to me about it. What do we need to do? How do we fix it?" And so we had that conversation, and he ended up taking a couple of days off just to refresh and recharge, because it is hard work being a financial crimes investigator. So that would be that. Now the 9 box gives us a way to identify potential. We know who our best and brightest are in a general way, but it makes it official who our talent is that has potential. So that's how we use the 9 box matrix. So you put all of that together, and you've got a really, really complete leadership cycle that the analysts are living by, and they're clearly understanding through all of what I just described. How could you not understand where you are and what we
Right.
think
There
and what
should
we
be no
believe?
surprise.
No surprise. The only thing that catches me off guard occasionally is when there's going to be a termination. We do involuntary and we do voluntary, or they follow a performance improvement plan for 45 days just to keep their job. A lot of people, even though the cadence is there, the discussions are there, and we document everything, and they get a copy of it in the email. All those discussions are there, and if I ask Copilot, give me a timeline of every single communication we've had with this person for this 6 month period, it'll kaboom, give me a table with everything, every discussion linked to every email, because everything gets emailed to them and us, because that's transparency right there.
Uh-huh.
And then it goes in their file. So I can literally say, hey, all of these things happened with you for the last 6 months. How could you be surprised about this conversation today? Help me understand. And I mean that in a genuine, authentic way. Like, help me understand how you feel surprised about this conversation. So, and the tough part on the performance improvement or voluntary separation is that's a tough choice, because it's a very attractive choice to leave. It's a 60-day off ramp, or you have to follow a guideline that I've had to build, like a brick wall around you of what you have to do to keep your job. So talk about hold the line. That's the PIP
Yes.
is where the line is held for sure. If we
Well,
can't get there before then.
I mean, and I will say, as a former practitioner, you are an HR person's dream, because I can't tell you how many times someone would come and they'd just go, "We need to get rid of this person." Okay,
Mm,
well, what conversations have we had? Oh, well, I've talked to him a couple of times. Okay, cool. Have you documented? Did you send an email as a follow up? I wasn't one of those, did you complete this form? It was,
mm,
did you send like an email summary saying, this is what we discussed? Here are the behaviors. Here's what I expect. No, but we need to get rid of them. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
not at all.
And I wasn't that, definitely, you always want to be able to defend your decision, and the more paperwork you have, that's great. But I don't over rotate on that as much as I do, are you doing this? Are we doing what's right for the employee?
That's right.
You can't just blindside them.
No.
And early in my career, I struggled. The first couple of terminations I had to do as a manager before I got
Mhm.
into HR. And one of my mentors taught me a line that always kind of reset. And I used it in 20 years of HR every time I had to do some type of termination. I would always open and say, unfortunately, your actions have led us to the point where I need to have this conversation today. It's not going to be
Okay.
pleasant. And then I
Right.
would just dive right in. But for me, it was also as someone facilitating was reminding myself that I am executing on a decision and behavior pattern that the other individual set forth. Not necessarily, I don't like Devin, I'm just going to fire him. I don't
Right.
think I ever did that. So and it's interesting. I love that. I love the rigidity of it, the
Mhm.
predictability, and I love it's just inherently transparent.
It
But,
is. It is.
one of the things that I've heard a lot is that Gen Z professionals sometimes want to test the boundaries of a workplace norms. So not necessarily like the production side, which is easy to quantify. How do you guide them towards like these professional standards, but doing it in a way that is still honoring them individually and allowing them to be authentic? Because it's a delicate balance.
It is a delicate balance, and that's where the relationship of a friend comes into play, instead of the boss side.
Mhm,
You know, so I have somebody that was wearing a hat in the office, and we don't have necessarily rigid rules on dress code, but a hat's a little too far. So it's a text. I said, "Hey, I'm not going to pull you for a hat on your head." I said, "But we've decided as leadership that kind of crosses the line on a workplace attire, even though we have kind of a loose guideline on it. And
mhm.
that's a little too far. Take it off when you're in the office." And that was a text. And then it happened again a couple of weeks later. Said hat, just text hat. So you can apply that type of it. It depends on the situation. So for something trivial like that, it's just a quick text, like, and why we've decided, like we decided that's not okay, right? But if it's more serious, like potential comments that could be mm, a little off color for an office, that needs a quick conversation in person and to explain why. And we want to protect people for their identifiable traits, their race, religion, gender decisions. If it's like transgender type stuff, like we want to honor all of these different people. And neurodivergence is a lot. There's a lot of that now that's just kind of out in the open. People live in their neurodivergence these days. We honor that. It's no problem. We will work. We'll navigate around that with you openly. So I hope that answers the question because it just depends. It's situational. It depends on how serious the situation is.
Yeah,
On
and I like that, kind of that approach of, "Hey, hat," like just a gentle reminder.
right.
'Cause I mean, you know, we also have to remember that because my daughter's Gen Z, she's 23,
Okay.
and they went the bulk of their senior year was in confinement. They were doing it through Zoom and, even part of their college was from home. And, without having this whole return to the office type of thing, they don't really learn those norms because they don't teach them to you in college, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
One of the many things about our education, like prepare them for not just the studies, but also to how to interact and what to say in a meeting and how to push back but do it respectfully. Respectful conflict is great on teams, but they don't really
Mhm.
teach kids. It's so weird saying kids, but
Yeah, yeah,
you
but
know
I kind of see it the same way too, yeah, kids.
yeah. But also I think the Gen Z is also pretty perceptive.
Yes.
And just as an example, my daughter she graduated in May of last year. She decided to go and get her master's. And, I just asked her, I said, what's the burning desire to go get a master's? Like, why don't you go
Mhm,
work and then come back and get it? She goes, Dad, two things. One, I know that I probably won't do it. So I'm already in the zone. I'd rather stay in the zone. She goes, two, Dad, you called my bluff. Just you deal with workforce data every day. You have to see more of what I'm seeing, which is the market is contracting.
mhm.
It's going through some kind of, an adjustment. She goes, I'd rather ride that adjustment and get education to make me even more hireable whenever the market sets itself right. I don't know. And I was studying finance and statistics.
Yeah.
I don't know that I had that kind of perception in college. Did you?
No, absolutely not for myself as well, and that conversation you're having with your daughter is a very similar conversation around every different topic you could think of with my best and my brightest Gen Z, the ones that are creating AI tools that are speeding up our processes, unbelievable. unbelievably smart and perceptive, yes. So the best and the brightest, that is the way they work. That is the way they operate. Once they learn the lines, once they know what we're looking for performance, and understand why, they're I mean, we're blowing it away in many cases. I get the numbers weekly from the engagement leaders, and weekly for most of them. And I just look at the performance of 98% perfection on a case that they've investigated, 99, sometimes zero returns from quality assurance on the case. And they're doing, their goal is four on one account that we manage, four cases a day. They're doing six. We have to tell them, slow it down a little bit. And maybe since you're so good at your job, help help a colleague instead. When you hit your four, go help somebody else get as good as you are. That's kind of the way I deal with it. I mean, if you can knock out a fifth one, go for it. But if you can use that time to help somebody else get as good as you are, let's do that too. So
That's, I mean, kudos to you because a lot of managers would not think that way of how do I take that extra capacity and bring those best practices over to some of my mid performers. So
mhm.
kudos to you. Do you find that for Gen Z that they are individualistic or more collectivistic?
They're good. Oh, that's a really tough question. I'm going to guess at this one based on my gut.
Hmm.
They like to be part of a family environment. I have one group that always comes in the office, even though we're only required Tuesday a week. I call them the frat boys, and they really operate like a frat, creatively in the AI space, just as a friends in the office. But I don't know if they're friends outside of the office. I think this is just why they come in so
Hmm.
often, is just to be together and work together and have that creative space that. And then I've helped to try to foster that through the AI Innovation Lab and the AI Innovation Elite team that I created. So I really try to foster that environment because their creativity and their intelligence is through the roof, and that perception that you're talking about, it's 100% true. And when you're able to get all of that together and drive it towards performance, their careers are going to be so set. I wish I would have had such a clear line for myself. I just had to battle it out to bank manager at 24 years old or 25. And I mean, to get there at that age when I was really ready for it, I didn't have somebody saying, here's the line, here's what you need to do. I just had to battle it out with the executives in the bank to get where I wanted to
Same.
go. Same.
Same. Yes. I think I hit it at 23. No, 24. So same
Mhm.
age as you. And I was managing people that were my parents' age,
Yeah.
you
Yes,
know?
yes.
So it
Yes.
was just so incredibly surreal. And I'm sure you got told this all the time. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm in this position because I did things a little bit differently. Can I teach you how to do things differently? And so yeah, it was not pleasant. It was not pleasant at all.
It could be until you got used to it, right? Because I got used to it after a certain amount of time because I became the fix it guy when it came to branch banking.
Same.
So I remember my very first kind of run-in with a baby boomer on, I don't know the age group at the time. She must have been a boomer, but she was managing her branch. A nice person, a great person, but no employees wanted to stay with her, and the attrition and the customers through, just not okay. So I was always running in the 90s in customer service, and my employees did not leave unless it was for an upward mobility position. So just going in with those receipts, let's call it a Gen Z term, right? I
Yeah.
have receipts. This
Yeah.
works. You
Receipts.
should, take a look at these receipts. This works. And this is why I think it works. So the old school beat them up until they do what you want had to go. Back then, that's 20 years ago. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. But I do think both of us admit it was a struggle. But I think for me, it allowed me to seek first to understand, then try to be understood. The whole
Hmm.
7 habits. It really kind of put the pedal to the metal for me, and I think that's why every time there's a new generation, I'm just so obsessed with understanding like what makes them tick. How are they going to be different? What's the impact on the
Agree.
workforce? Uh, just because I think that it's interesting, and I do want to talk about something that I found really interesting in our debrief. You launched high school internship programs when you were at or Washington Mutual. For
Washington
those,
Mutual, yes.
yeah, those that were not in banking, don't like WAMU? Who is that? That's
Who was
Washington
that? Right.
Mutual, and you also do it now at KPMG, right? And oh,
But we're working on
how,
it. We're working on it because we need to be able to deliver a low cost option to our clients. And give opportunities to college level and experienced kids. We're working on that right now at the hub. So at the firm, yes, there's a program in place that they operate
Mhm.
on. But we need to do the same thing, but more specifically to offer our clients a better cost to use us as their vendor for their analyst work, whatever that
So
may
if
be.
someone's yeah, I mean, this is awesome. If someone is listening to this, like, how do you design an early career program?
That is definitely hand in hand with our HR professionals, the learning development people. We're in that conversation now. But having a baseline in it from the Washington Mutual days of taking the program that was in place, understanding it because it wasn't I didn't create it back then. It was a program that we had and I launched it, but I had to understand how it worked, the why behind it, the GPAs, the behaviors.
Mhm.
Working with the guidance counselors to select the high school interns to be interviewed. So having that understanding, I know what it's going to need to look like, and I know the on ramp for somebody with no experience in a college degree is probably a good 6 months before we're going to be able to earn a fee income from their work. So designing it all around those parameters is just it's the way it has to be because that's the way it's going to work. Period, and it's my experience shows the same thing. Although hiring an intern to do analyst work versus hiring an intern to run a cash sheet register, if I can be so simplistic, at a teller at a bank, they are entirely different things. So there are going to be some different approaches to make the financial crimes work happen in that generation or in the young people.
And I think that's a great way to develop your pipeline because you are managing so many early career. But I think too, and again, kind of calling on our banking, junior achievement. One of the things I loved about it is going and teaching some of these
Yeah.
financial basics to high schoolers. How do you balance a checkbook? How do
Yes.
you
Yes.
manage your account? Things like that, and being able to kind of pull some of those people out. And for those that don't know about junior achievement, it's going into high schools. They're not discriminating about which high school to do. However, whenever you're in banking, a lot of times, we were looking at low to moderate income because we
Yes,
wanted
we were.
to, yeah, invest in that. And that's why I did it. I found so much joy from it. And so
I
I think
did.
yeah, it's such a great way of going and identifying that early talent. I've told the story a couple of times of one of the guys in my senior class. We were running a business and I was going to be out for 2 weeks on a business trip. And I come back, and whenever I started the class, we had like five different companies. But whenever I came back, there were three. And I
Hmm.
was like, wait, what happened? Well, this one kid understood the program, started reading on his own, and his uncle was like an accountant or something. He started tapping into all these people. And over the 2 weeks, did a merger and acquisition of his two competitors. And I mean, this kid's 17 years old, I mean, so I pulled him in. I said, Tony, walk me through this. Like, this is so far beyond where you are now. But it was that intellectual curiosity,
Right.
and moving that from curiosity to action. I ended up hiring him as a summertime teller. And I
You
kid
had
you
to.
not,
You had to.
God, yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
put him in the drive-through, which, was very hard to establish client relationships. He outsold all the other tellers. Usually in April, May, I could hear from my office sometimes, the drive-through, you'd have these older people going, "When's Tony coming back? Have we gotten his grades yet?" I mean, it was just such, just a community around him because he was such an amazing kid, but I never would have
That is
had
a
that,
joy. That is a joy.
not going into the high school. So if you build that out, I'd love to have you come back on and just kind of walk that through because I think that's a wonderful,
Absolutely. Love to do
wonderful
that. Love to talk about that because I'm sure I'll have some interesting experiences with that generation alpha to talk
oh
about as
yeah,
well.
it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be
Yeah.
fun. Well, let's wrap up. What is one piece of advice you would give to anyone who is either currently leading or about to lead Gen Z?
I would say the best thing that I did was embrace what they are and work on myself to become the more vulnerable boss friend, and understand what that means and the vulnerability. We've given some examples on that on how that actually looks in a team's message for myself today. So work on that with yourself. Your transparency with their career is important. Follow the cadence. Monthly is minimum. That's minimum. But be there as much as you can, be aware of what's going on as much as you can, and then understand that your responsibility is to continuously be learning from them as well. I've learned my lines. It's not that they can impose them on me, but I know where I want to be with them in the relationship. And then that keeps everything authentic. And that's the authenticity you hear about a lot is learning from each other because they're smarter than I am in that technology space, period. So I am a good power user on AI, but I still, the things that they're doing around AI is amazing to me. So that open mindedness about what they are, who they are, will, and then honestly, apply it across the population that you lead, depending on the size. Everybody responds to this type of leadership. I don't have a single person that doesn't respond well to this. And if they are having a bad day, they tell me. It's so easy to fix it. It's not easy
Yeah.
for them, but it's easy to tell me, and then let's fix it, right? So it's very rewarding. Just like you talked about that teller that you had to hire because you gave him the space to be that amazing person, and then you had to hire him, and then everybody loved him, and that's really what it comes down to is the joy of running an office with that type of a workforce that's happy to be there, that performs, hits the numbers for you don't even really have to try to hit the numbers. We're ahead of plan by I think 20 or 25% right now. We're ahead of plan. And it's all because of them. They will make you money if you do these things. They will make your firm money
That is something I hope everyone hears. And also, too, I do want to call out the piece. What you're doing with Gen Z, we should be doing with every generation in the
every
workforce.
generation.
You know,
Yes.
it's kind of like it should be the minimum price of admission, but unfortunately, it's not. Where can people find and engage with you if they have more questions about the episode?
Yeah, best place where we met is on LinkedIn. Devin Collins, DevinCollins. Devin Collins. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm very active. I like to post, you know, some silly content, some good content from.
Interactions.
Yeah, there we go. My screen blanked out. Sorry. I do like
There
to
you go.
post some of my interactions, keeping it classy as much as possible, just so people can know what it's like to work inside of a big four because it's an interesting world. It's a lot of work. It's hard.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is that. It is that. Well, Devin, thank you for carving out some time and sharing your learnings with the audience. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.